In this presentation, I will be discussing forensic linguistics and the power the language utilised has on those concerned by presenting critical, theoretical, linguistic and stylistic concepts and analysing the resources relevant to this module. But first of all, what is forensic linguistics? Forensic linguistics is the study of language within law and policing communities, commonly used among police officers, prison officers, offenders, prison inmates, and those who deal with the police for any specific reason. It is often associated with sociolinguistics, as forensic linguistics has an inevitable involvement with a certain part of the public and how they communicate with each other within the confines of a crime scene, a police station, a prison, or simply on the streets. Forensic linguistics can be explored in two different ways: spoken and written, such as in police interviews, police reports, and legal documents. To understand how forensic linguistics became an everyday practice, let's take a look at the growth of forensic linguistics explained in An Introduction to Forensic Linguistics, Language in Evidence by Malcolm Coulthard and Alison Johnson. Initially, the growth of forensic linguistics was slow. In unexpected places, there appeared isolated articles in which an author, often distinguished linguist, analysed disputed confessions or commented on the likely authenticity of purported verbatim records of interaction, or identified and elevated inconsistencies in language which had been attributed to immigrants or aboriginals by the police in their written records of depositions, or assessed the linguistic similarity of rival trademarks. There was, however, in those early days, no attempt to establish a discipline or even a methodology for forensic linguistics. The work was usually undertaken as an intellectual challenge and almost always required the creation rather than simply the application of a method of analysis. By contrast, in the past 15 years, there has been a rapid growth in the frequency with which courts in a series of countries have called on the expertise of linguists. In consequence, there is now a developing methodology and a growing number of linguists who act as expert witnesses, a few even on full-time basis. Early forensic linguistic research originated in a wide range of disciplines: linguistics, law, psychology, anthropology, and sociology, and included topics as diverse as handwriting analysis, forensic phonetics, and the role of the linguist as an expert in a court, covering work in Australia, Europe, and North America. Research since 1990 has continued to come from all these disciplines, making forensic linguistics a multi- and cross-disciplinary field with up-to-date bibliography now reaching considerable proportions by consideration with the early work. Here are a few first examples. It is a fact that the police have been referred to as many different slang names, known by and used by the UK as a whole, as they have been popularised through many outlets. This includes coppers, bobbies, plods, boys in blue, wooden tops, the fuzz, popo, in the slammer, busies, bacon butties, feds, the clink, and banged up. Whilst these names have lots of negative connotations, they have been normalised as the standard language surrounding the police. Diving deeper into the everyday life of a police officer, they are often forced to handle malicious behaviour in settings such as riots and protests. Of course, abusive language comes with this, heavily including expletives, slurs, derogatory and misogynistic language. If we take a look at an episode of Police, we can see how this language is used between the protesters and the police. Firstly, we have the act of protesting in itself, as they often use chanting and singing as a way to exaggerate their cause, to have their voices heard. However, as the protest is beginning, one of the police officers reminds the others, do not assume they are out to cause trouble. This defeats the stereotype of protesters only out to cause harm and brings a sense of respect to the event. They also ask the protesters to move along in a respectful way that can only gain respect in return, which shows professionalism. On the other hand, there are troublemakers, as one of the police officers threatens to break his fucking nose. This highlights a contrast between a peaceful and a violent protest, the police having to cross the line when it comes to a respect that the opposition refuses to adhere to in order to put an end to it, which is unprofessional but sometimes necessary, and sometimes police officers are disrespectful from the start, assuming that if someone is present at a protest, then they are automatically out to cause trouble. We can see this language continued in a number of texts, such as in police reports. Police reports are used to document a crime and in court when presenting the case. The police officers must write these in an accurate, clear and factual manner in order to help assess the crime. Here we can move on to police interviews. Police suspect interview discourse has a vital function in the criminal justice process. For the police themselves, the formal interview with a suspect is a key part of any investigation into a criminal offence. In many jurisdictions, the interview later goes on to have a significant further function as a piece of evidence in itself, exhibited and presented in court as a part of the prosecution case. Words spoken in the interview thus have a dual context, being produced in both interview room and courtroom, and a correlating dual function, being both investigative and evidential. Yet these contexts and functions are very different and perhaps even conflicting, as we shall see. In addition, interview data undergoes changes in form en route from interview room to courtroom, substantially affecting the integrity of the evidence. This contamination of verbal evidence makes a stark contrast with the forensic treatment of physical evidence, which, according to long accepted principle, must be presented as inact as possible, by Kate Howarth in Police Interviews as Evidence, in Malcolm Coulthard, A. May and R. Sousa Silva Routledge Handbook of Forensic Linguistics, 2nd edition 2020. Let's take a look at a police interview included in this book. The police interview is extremely important in the context of forensic linguistics, as it follows a transcript of an interview of one of the most infamous criminals in the UK, Dr. Harold Shipman, W. He is being interviewed by the prosecution counsel, PR, who begins the interview in a professional manner, addressing the whole room on the question to be asked regarding the trial. He is very precise when he asks them to look at page 251 and asks W the questions he needs in order to proceed. In the beginning, it seems they have equal power in the courtroom until PR starts to pressure W into admitting the truth. This is an example of a classic police interview where W confesses to not knowing how to defend himself. In police interviews, a law emitted for the police to allude to is Miranda rights, or in the US, a Miranda warning. It is a recognised list of rights that anyone held in custody by the police has to have read to them. This is important in regards to forensic linguistics because it is standard lexis used by the police. The Miranda warning was issued by police authorities in order to ensure suspects are aware of the following rights. The right to remain silent, which gives the suspect the choice to confess or not confess to any event taking place due to the second right. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You'll have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. If you decide to answer questions now without an attorney present, you will still have the right to stop answering at any time until you talk to an attorney. Having these rights allows for the suspect's response to be honoured over any case of illegal activity amongst the police, i.e. the forging of a legal document. This allows us to look closer at the population of cop speak, the American unofficial term for the language used by the police and public citizens. This is a more generalised way of studying the terminology, gathered in a list curated by the Phoenix government. This list entails 3511, a vehicle that has been impounded for a mandatory 30 days, APS, Arizona Public Service, ASAP, as soon as possible, ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, bailed out, subject jumped out of a car and ran, BYFRND, boyfriend. Beer run, shoplifting beer. Bond out, prisoner who is going to post bail and be released. Being made/burned, undercover officer's ID is known. BHND, behind. Bike, motorcycle. Bikers, motorcycle riders. Booking prisoner into jail, and more. This is being a way for the police to easily understand an order or a warning so that they can know how to handle the situation. It makes communication easier, and some of the abbreviations such as ASAP are used in our everyday speech and text speech. Forensic linguistics and the study of forensic linguistics has a wide future due to the everyday speech being developed, as exemplified by the theoretical, linguistic and stylistic devices. It is beneficial for everybody concerned to communicate in a professional manner to get a successful outcome, and the power the language utilised has will continue to develop in the future. Thank you for listening.